So a lot of people don't know what emergency medicine is, and it's one of the nuanced bases of medicine that exists today. The Royal College of Emergency Medicine UK is where most of my training comes from, and that is the subject that I've been practicing all my life. And the emergency physician is the one who's always on guard, and he's the one who's always on his feet. We don't have an OPD. We are not sitting in a lovely chamber with a pre-existing appointment. We don't know who's going to step in into our corridors at any given moment. It could be a night shift. I'll be sitting with my cup of coffee, and I'll be probably be getting ready to doze off at around maybe 8 o'clock, 9:30 or so, and bang at 3 o'clock, I have three road traffic accidents. Okay, and I have to handle all of them by myself. At perhaps 5 o'clock, I'll have a heart attack. At 6 o'clock, I will have a premature pregnancy. It could be anything. So, the emergency medicine field covers almost everything. An emergency physician is the one physician who knows to read an ECG, he manages to read an X ray, he manages to read the CT scan of a head injury patient. So we are basically jack of all, master of none, but however, we are the first responders who are on the site. And I live in Goa, and so basically, the government of Goa has mediated something known as the Rakshak program, and that is where, through the Honorable Chief Minister, is the one who mediated it and created it. And through this Rakshak program, we go about teaching bystanders CPR. I think all of you know what CPR is. Excellent. So that is what we do. So basically, we teach the bystanders CPR. And most importantly, in all aspects, now there are two aspects to me. Okay, so I'm an 80s kid. Okay, so growing up, there were two options that we had. It was either doctor or engineer. Okay, I was terrible at physics, I was horrible at mathematics. So the next option was I was good at biology and English. My mother wanted to push me into arts because my mother was an MA in English literature. But my father was very adamant that he wanted me to be a doctor. And that's how I got into med school in Russia. And that's where my journey in medicine began. But the thing is, as a child, I was put in boarding school. You have to understand, I led a very, very solitary life. This whole lecture may sound very self-centered, but this is the story of my life. This is the boy who had very little friends. He didn't make a lot of friends because he was a bit weird. Okay, a lot of people didn't get along with him. He was terrible at sports. My father would have to watch his cricket matches alone, sadly. Ye bacha to bekar hai. So, that sort of attitude. So that was what my background is. So when everybody in my boarding school, I was sent to boarding school, by the way, at when I was 10 years of age. And when I was sent to boarding, I didn't, I wasn't very successful in making a lot of friends. And this is 1994 we're talking about. And this is before the iPhone era or the cell phone era or the Insta Reel era where you had to keep yourself occupied. So all you had was your imagination. So when everyone was playing sports, I was in the other end of the football field, and I was making up stories of princes and princesses in their castles, and talking to myself every day, "Ye kone pagal insan." So that is what was the basic aspect of my life. But in what happened was I never let the kid in myself die. Okay, my father put me in medicine. I gave absolute dedication to that field, and I channeled it towards emergency medicine. But at the same time, I never let the kid inside me go away. That kid is very much still inside me. You have all seen Tare Zameen Par at some point, I guess. Yeah, so that's pretty much, roughly the idea that I would like to inculcate. So I never let the kid inside me go away. So I let the kid inside me live and thrive, because you have to have a part too. You've heard of multiple personality disorders. Mine wasn't a disorder to say, mine was more of a creation. I had to create two personalities. So I always tell people there are two things. There are three Vyasas that exist. One is Dr. Vyas, who sits in the hospital. Then there's, the minute he leaves the hospital, he is no longer Dr. Vyas. He's VedVyas, the poet. And towards my friends, I'm Vyas. As simple as that. Okay, so these are the three aspects of my persona that I developed over the years, and the reasons why I had to keep them thriving. Now, when you think about writing, you always imagine a writer as someone who has all the resources. You think of a person with a room and a typewriter at his behest. He has his lovely pet with a goldfish bowl and all those things. But My resource was none of this. My resource was medicine, and my resource was pain. Okay, so you have this saying in English: when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And my lemons were pain. Okay, I put this very categorically in my book that if you want to go more into depth, okay, the word shloka is a meter of poetry in Sanskrit, comes and derives indirectly from the word shoka, that is sorrow. Shok manana. You have heard of this? Yes. So long back, there was a story where the Rishi Valmiki saw two birds embracing each other, and a hunter hunts one of them down and kills the bird. And Valmiki sees this, and he's in tears. He's in absolute tears. And from that, he composed a very long meter in Sanskrit, which turned out to be one of the first shlokas, which came from Valmiki's shoka. Okay, so that is what the whole concept of poetry is. That's the reason I wrote very empathetically that the source, all my resource is pain. Okay, so my resource of pain is what I translated into poetry. And I also mentioned very empathetically that without pain, there cannot be any poetry. Now, what caused me pain were multiple incidences in my life, witnessing certain unfortunate incidences that a child should never see, witnessing certain deaths, witnessing certain events, witnessing all sorts of weird things that a person should not have to see at a certain age, which made me keep on writing. I'll tell you why I wrote. I had no solace. I had no one to go to. I didn't make a lot of friends, and there was nobody to sit, and there was no Instagram that I had to sit ranting a big line and post it on a reel. There was nobody, so I had kept writing, and that's what. And what happened was over the course of years, and by the time it was I think 2 to 3 years, my mother discovered that I have compiled approximately 290 pages of poetry. And she was like, you know what, why don't you, this is really good. I mean, I have to run everything by her. She's my first guru. Okay, so having said that, I ran it by her, and she said, why don't you get them published? And that this was an accidental book. I call this the accidental book. And this is what created my first book on poetry. The second book is what I'm planning next. I don't know how it is going to turn out, because I always say, you don't write the book writes itself. And my book was never something that, okay, ask me utke na, I'll write 10 pages. That was never the case. My thing was I told you I'm an emergency physician. So I get bare minutes to myself. In an entire day or 24 hours apart from working and sleeping, I probably have 20 minutes free for a sitcom. Okay. And I practically get some 5 to 10 minutes to, take my notes app out and write a poem. That's about it. It's not a day that I plan to write. And the thing is, I kept on writing. The whole secret to this is perseverance. And coming to the third aspect is, I dedicated the book, I wrote it indirectly, dedicated this book to the great goddess, my mother, the great goddess. So everybody asked me, what do you mean by that? Or some people even said, oh, Vyas, dedicated this book to his mother, who he calls the great goddess. The answer is yes, and the answer is no as well. I revere the great goddess because I'll tell you why. And the great goddess speaks through your maternal or your female companions in your life who give you inspiration. We have two aspects in life. One is called Purusha and one is called Prakriti. The male sustains, the female creates. Okay? And in some aspects of Sanskrit, we say that there is a god that you can see and a god that you cannot see. And where do you see the goddess? You see the goddess in art. The goddess is personified in motion. The goddess is personified in a painting. Or the goddess is personified in a person dancing. The goddess is personified in something in movement. That is where you see the great goddess constantly thriving and living. And that is the divine feminine that I channeled in. And finally, to the absolute point where I mentioned emergency medicine and authorship. This was not a planned event, it happened. But I'm glad it happened. I'll tell you why. Because it gave me a gateway to understand that I'm more capable of more than just one thing. And I would advise everyone in this day and age, where everyone is so contrived to create only one skill set, please try to create more than one skill set as you grow. There are some, you would be hearing stories of people who have left certain jobs to become either stand-up comics, They're amazing at comedy. They never knew they were amazing at comedy. There are some people who became artists. I think there was even a doctor who became a pilot later. So you never know what life can channel you into and what life can take you into, but keep that child alive. Keep that child within you alive. You know that child is inside you somewhere. That child is inside you, breathing, living, existing, and that child has been smothered by society ki ye mat karo, wo mat karo, don't do this, don't do that. And the biggest killer of dreams, as you all know, is log kya kahenge. Okay? So never ever give in to that. Be yourself, be determined, and channel your energy into your creative genius, or there is a genius hiding inside the minds and bodies of everyone present here. That I can guarantee tell you that. I don't know who amongst you later are going to end up as singers. I don't know who amongst you are going to, even I don't know what stream of branch of education you are in, but I don't know who amongst you are going to end up as singers, will be end up as tabla players, or a famous artist, or maybe a great chartered accountant. You never know. Okay? So always keep the child inside you alive, keep the child inside you breathing, and always make sure that you keep your inner goddess and you channel the great goddess within you to keep all your spirits alive. Thank you.